Hello, I'm Brandon Ross with Xiocom. Xiocom is a wholesale Wi-Fi provider, mostly concentrated in the developing world. We've done deployments now in Rwanda, here in the Dominican Republic, and then a few more rural places around the U.S., like some areas south of Atlanta and Georgia. So I thought it was kind of timely that since I was here and got some good photos of our network here and how it gets installed, that it might be interesting to share a little bit of that with the NANOG crowd and show you how these things work. Clearly the developing world is where a lot of new business is going to come from for pretty much everyone in this room, and some level of awareness of what those networks might look like probably could help you out a little bit. At least the pictures I think are interesting. So how do you get internet here? This is Marinito here in the Dominican Republic. It's about a 3-hour drive from here up in the mountains. This is a house on the top of a mountain. They don't have electricity. They don't have a phone line. That truck is only there because that's how we got there. They don't have a truck. They get around with donkeys and horses and their own feet. But they have a TV. Or how do you get internet here? This is Kigali, Rwanda, one of the kind of a typical house in Rwanda. Of course, I had lunch here. This is also Rwanda, but they probably need some internet access too. And you can kind of see that they're not totally strangers to technology. You've got TV antennas on pretty much every house in the area. In this part of the country, they have electricity. So how do you build these networks? Well, first of all, you put together a basic design, just like you would for any network. In this case, like I said, we're wireless. There's no wires going up these mountains, so it's all got to be backhauled over wireless. This is a pretty simple network. On the top right here, you have Santiago, and we're running a licensed link and a unlicensed link for backup between there and this Marinito Tower, which is near that house I showed you. From there, we're going to build that kind of as a hub site to cover. There's all these little towns. You see a few of them here. This is just our very first phase. But there's all these little towns spread throughout these mountains that, again, they have no electricity. They have no existing phone service. There's no cell signal there either. Once you get over this, my pointer. Once you get over this mountain ridge here, there's no cell signal. There's no nothing. So when you build these things, you have to expect a lot of problems that you don't really run into, at least not quite as much, when you build networks in a developing country. You have to expect that the information you're going to get is far from perfect. You don't know which rack number and which tie down your T3 is coming in on. Rather, you're lucky if the guy who goes out there to put it in is able to take a picture of what it looks like, so later on you're able to try to help troubleshoot it later. And of course, since the information is imperfect, you have to expect a lot of changes. Almost all the arrangements made in these developing world areas are handshake agreements. You go to a town and say, hey, I need to put a wireless repeater somewhere. You're not going to sign a contract with someone who, frankly, could very well not even be literate. You're going to go there, you're going to say, hey, I'm going to send you whatever is a few bucks in the local currency every month, and you're going to let me put a tower on the top of your house. And in exchange, maybe I'll give you free internet access. And this is all done based on personalities. Of course, the language barriers are clear. Expertise barriers as well. I made some comments earlier about how a lot, very early in NANOG, about how a lot of the operators that we've been working with, because we always partner with a local company to do these things, how a lot of them were insisting on doing NAT for their entire backbone, not just for the edge of their network, but they believed that they couldn't even get addresses to publicly address their core networks. So it takes a lot of patience to explain those things. And then probably the biggest thing coming from a developed society about these services is you have to start to change the way you think about these networks. We're not talking 5 nines for these networks in the developing world. We're not even talking 2 nines. If I can provide internet access and a phone line half of the time, 50% of the time, to that house on the top of that mountain, they are going to be thrilled with their service. Thrilled. And of course, the compensation that you receive for these services is in line with those expectations. That guy who can't afford a truck is not paying $29.95 a month for dial-up access, right? He's paying a lot less than that. So how do you do it? Well, like I said, you find a house, someone willing to have a tower on top of their house, and you sit down with them and buy them a coffee, buy them a drink, and say, hey, can I put a tower on your house? And they say yes. In this particular case, this is, again, another town about 3 hours from here called NANOG. And there's a house in the middle of town. You can see on the right side, they already had an old tower on the building. I was never able to really identify what the old antenna on it was. They weren't using it anymore. Some sort of omni antenna. Might have been for some sort of radio reception. I'm not really sure. But the antenna on the left is the new antenna that we put up, the new tower. You got to install power. Again, a lot of these towns don't have power. This particular one has power, but it is so unreliable, we're actually using the commercial power as the backup power to the solar. Luckily, it should be sunny there enough that they keep the batteries charged. Configure the equipment. Get up on the roof, put it all together, have your designs, climb the tower and put it in. It can be that simple. Thank goodness that is not me. I don't climb things that high. So back at the user's house, that house on top of the mountain, they clearly need an antenna on their end too. So hey, if you got a dead tree that you can shimmy up, put it up there, and that's it right there. You can see it just sitting there on the top of the dead tree. Run a nice aerial cable over to the house. You can kind of see it entering in the house there through the kitchen. Get a solar panel installed on the roof. Some wiring. Got some lights too. And here's our wiring closet inside the house. I don't know if yours looks like this, but there's a few parts here to call out. You know, you've got the PoE injector. That's what powers the CPE antenna that's sitting on the top of that dead tree. Of course, a power inverter because you have your batteries that are powering this whole thing. Plastic flowers are very important in your wiring closet, and of course, children's artwork. And then the rest of the wiring closet, you know, you have your battery. That's what's powering this house. They don't, again, no electricity in these areas. It's a VoIP MTA. In this case, the primary service we're providing there is voice. There's, again, no phone lines, no cell signal, and of course the phone. And it's you know, the cheapest phone you've probably seen in a long time. But the user in this house is absolutely thrilled. He's able to call his family in the town. He's not even trying to call the U.S. or anything like that. He's trying to call his family down in the town to say, hey, you know, I need some more water or I have some extra coffee to sell. Do you want to come up here and get it? And that's pretty much it. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I can tell you it's coming from always building networks in the developing world and moving to this has been extremely interesting, the kind of problems you have to solve. Some of the things I didn't really mention in here, but it's here in Santo Domingo, I'm sure we've all, especially people who haven't really traveled the developing world very much, have experienced what it's like to maybe have a little hard time finding Diet Pepsi in the morning or your favorite gum or something like that. But let me tell you that here in Santo Domingo, this is much more advanced than places like Kigali, Rwanda. They're like, if you didn't bring an Ethernet cable with you to plug in a deployment, you're not getting one, not until it can get shipped there from Europe, because that's the closest you can get that stuff. I actually had my laptop screen, the video card in my laptop died. I still had 4 days left there, and I'm like, well, where's the closest Mac store? You know where the closest Mac store is to Rwanda? Yeah, somewhere in Europe. Yeah, it's not real convenient. So anyway, Patrick?
Patrick Elmore, Akamai. 2 questions. First of all, if these guys can't pay $29 or even $2.90 or probably 29 cents, who paid for all this? And if you said that, I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, no, they are paying subscribers. They're just not paying $30 a month. What first of all, the labor is cheap, and the equipment we're using tends to be very inexpensive, but they're still paying subscribers, so they may pay the equivalent of a US $1, maybe 35 pesos a month for their service.
It seems like just the solar panel and the battery would take them, years to pay off, then to say nothing of the installation, the backhaul, the transit.
Well, so the solar power and the battery, usually the owner of the property is going to pay for themselves because they're going to power other things off of that too. We're not supplying that. We're supplying the CPE gear, which is usually a cost up front to them too. But it depends on the country and it depends on where you are. Some of these are government subsidized, some of them aren't. Some of them are subsidized by our partner that we're with there. So there are various models. It just depends on where you are.
No problem. And the second thing, since everyone here has filled out their survey, right, because if you haven't, I get to come and know you, you need to email the NANOG PC to say how good this presentation was since you've already filled out your survey, and you can't put this onto your survey.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So I have another question. Excuse me. I have one more question.
One more.
Yes, Stan Findings of VI Technical Services. For your service, for the one in Santo Domingo, maybe even Rwanda, what type of bandwidth are you getting going to the end user?
Yeah, so to the end user, it's typically 128K. I'm glad you asked that question, actually, because that's something I meant to mention. It's typically 128K up to maybe 512. It's very small amounts of bandwidth. The backbone itself is generally, something like the Trango gear, something like that. So we might get up to maybe 30 meg total on the backhaul, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what gear we put in and the environmental conditions.
Okay. And the voice component, is that hosted by it's voice over IP? Is it going to the service provider? And
typically, in our particular case, the partner that we're working with there in the local country runs the VoIP part. We don't. My company doesn't actually do that. But the VoIP service does stay local to the country. Where we have it, it's always a local voice switch that's peering with the local PTT or whoever the local phone companies are.
All right, thank you. It was a good presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
We got to cut it off.
Oh, please.
We got to cut it off. Okay. Awesome talk, though, Brandon. Thank you.